Hey everyone, this is Kim from It Again Bookstore, and today I'm with Troy Carrol Bucher. Hey Troy.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Now we met, I think it's like 2 years ago at this point, right? At Multiverse Con, a local
Uh,
convention here in Atlanta.
Correct. Yeah, I was down there doing some panels, and then I was also kind of leading the veterans meetup for it.
They had a veterans meet up there? I didn't know
Oh, of
that.
course, yes.
Huh. Okay. And and Multiverse Con is happening again this year, so you guys should look it up. It's in Atlanta. Okay. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name's Troy Butcher. I've been just retired last year after a little over 30 years in the military. I spent about 10 years enlisted, went to OCS, became an officer, and finished up right after battalion command, and then ran into a small medical condition and decided I needed to retire because of it. Wanted to go more, but that's okay. Let the younger guys do it. I also write, obviously, and love writing. Ever since I was very young, I've known I'm going to be a writer or want to be a writer. Since I was 8 years old, sitting at my grandmother's typewriter, trying to crank out stories and using up all her correction tape. For those that remember typewriters,
We have a typewriter in the store, actually.
Oh, awesome, perfect.
It's from the 70s.
Yeah, I haven't seen one in a long time. And then I ended up getting a bachelor's in English and then a master of fine arts in writing from Seton Hill, which I was very particular about choosing because their courses have an emphasis in genre fiction. So I was able to focus in writing science fiction and fantasy to do my master of fine arts, and it wasn't so much about the literary side, trying to be poor and write the next great American novel.
So, can you tell us a little bit about where you are? Or you're not supposed to.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of nowhere on Fort Sill, Oklahoma right now. Even though I've retired, I'm out training units to go to Afghanistan and Iraq in the same job I used to do, which is called CRAM. It's counter rocket and mortar, which means they're large Gatling guns around a base that shoot down incoming rockets and mortars. Everybody's seen the guns because you see them. They're on Navy ships called Sea Whiz. So they're in a lot of movies and things like that. But the Army has them on flatbed trucks, and we park them around bases and use them to protect soldiers downrange. So right now there's a National Guard unit out here training and going through a readiness exercise to make sure they're prepared to deploy downrange to Afghanistan. And so I run the whole construct of the exercise, the scenario, and everything they're going to be evaluated on out here with a crew of about 13 civilians with me and a couple other organizations that do other parts of it, like simulations and other stuff.
Wow. Okay. So, Lies of Deceit was a total badass book, and I think it's because it was written by a badass.
Not quite, but okay.
Okay. Can you tell us about your book?
Okay, so I guess this story is the story of Riam and Nola, two young protagonists. It is a coming of age, but it is certainly an adult.
Adult, not YA.
No, not YA. But it is a coming of age one. Mm-hmm. And what I wanted to do with this is I wanted to tell a traditional yet not traditional, coming of age type fantasy along the hero's journey. But then I wanted to subvert that. So, in your typical one, he has, like if you take Star Wars, he has Obi-Wan that teaches him and he moves on and they move along this journey. But I kind of wanted to subvert everything. I wanted the bad guys to later find out, well, there might be the good guys. The good guys to find out later they might be the bad guys.
I like that.
The school that's supposed to train him, he never gets there. And so that was one of my original kind of ideas was, what if the hero...
That's a little bit of a spoiler because I was expecting him to get there, but...
No.
It's okay.
No, it's okay to be a spoiler.
Okay.
I mean, you'll read it. There's more to the story than that. But I wanted it to be, what is, if the hero never makes it, the hero never gets trained, the hero barely meets that mentor figure and never has time to train him. How does he still solve this major problem in the world when none of that has ever happened? So that was for Riam. Nola kind of came along as a later co-protagonist as I moved along in the story, and she just insisted she would have a larger and larger part as I wrote the book until it became about split equal between them. But anyway, the book takes place in a world where thousands of years ago, the gods fought and died. So, they worship the fallen, but there's no belief in gods anymore because that time has passed. And then we find out, well, maybe a couple might be slumbering, trying to come back. And so that's the overarching story of the 3-book series, is what's going on with them, and how do we stop this? How do we stop them from coming back? Because that may not necessarily be such a good thing.
So I was interested, like Nola disappeared for a chunk of it, and I'm like, I know she's coming back. So I feel like in the next book, you're going to focus more on her. Am I right?
There is quite a bit focused on her, yes, and her story. She has a whole piece. I don't like to tell too many spoilers, but hopefully a lot of the people that are on here have read it or are interested in this. But she has a very particular journey in uniting the tribes and bringing all the tribes together as one people. And, she's given up basically her culture and has to embrace another culture and has to bring them together. So, yeah, certainly a very large part. Yes. And
when's book 2 coming out?
I believe late February, early March of next year. It is due the end of next month to my editor.
And
so end of July.
We were talking about that before we went live. Like, how do you find time to write?
It's a little challenging out here. There are some down minutes and stuff like that, but for the most part, I'm working and stressing that I need to be working on the writing. So it's going to make July a very, very painful month, and we'll see how it turns out. But we have the cover for the second one. That's kind of a sneak peek. I think Ryan Pancoast did a fabulous job, an even better job than the first one, and I really love this one with Nola on the front cover. She's very powerful and mysterious, and she's about to tear that castle up or the people in it. So I think it's fantastic. So
who designed these covers?
So I designed this one based off of the scene of it, but it was painted by Ryan Pancoast. He's a big painter. He's a big painter for Magic: The Gathering. Done about 100 cards at least. Even down to some of the mana, and he's fantastic. And I'm really lucky because I got to be his first foray into cover arts, and now he's doing a bunch of other books. So it's fantastic to be his first novels. Yeah, he's a great painter. So I got really, really lucky in that regard, having him as the artist. He's just phenomenally amazing. If you go online, there's tons of videos where he will show you how he paints through his paintings. They're fantastic.
I'll have to look that up. Okay, so tell me how this book came about.
So this book came about.
That cover looks awesome. I agree, Susan.
Yeah.
Susan.
Thank you. So I started writing a story before I did my MFA, and I wanted to write this story about this universe where, you kind of had these light and dark gods, and the dark ones were banished. And when they came back, they fought and they kind of fell to the different Earths that are out there and continued their war, because the good gods realized the only way to fight the darkness was to give up their powers along with the dark ones and bring their fight down to the mortal worlds. And I wanted to tell the story of 2 of them that fell on this particular world that this story takes place in. And I wrote about 30,000 words into it, and I was like, wow, this is a really hard, complicated book to start out on. And so when I decided to go into the MFA program, I was like, I'm going to start on some other project. And I thought, well, what's this world going to be like 1,000 years later? And so 1,000 years later, that's where we get the story of Riam and Nola. And certainly that fight that happened way in the past, all that I wrote for it gives me some rich history to pull from. If you read the epitaphs at the beginning of every 4th chapter, it tells you the whole history of the gods and stuff without being heavy-handed put into the story. And so I like doing that, where I could follow that and pull from what I wrote way back when I was kind of formulating this world. So that's how I got to writing this one. And really, the whole book started, if you've read it, there's a sequence where Nola is traveling the ways, and she's seeing different possible futures she could have for her life. And there's one, she's in the arena fighting. And that is the very first scene I wrote writing this book, was that scene in the arena. And it didn't work, and I put it aside. And then when I got back to Nola, I was like, oh, this works for her, not him. And it was really nice to be able to reuse the very first scene I wrote for the book.
We got some questions. Let's see.
Sure.
Nicole would like to know, can you tell us about how you created the languages?
Sure. So along my travels in the military, I spent 3 years living in Ankara, Turkey.
Oh, I've been to Turkey.
Yeah, so it was a fantastic place. So I used basically the rules of Turkish grammar and stuff like that, but with a made-up language. So if you spoke it out loud, it would kind of sound like Turkish, but it would all be made-up words. So I kind of based it on Turkish. In fact, there's more in there that's based on Turkish, because if you've read the book, in the second half where Riam is basically a chirp, a trash collector in a city, that all came from watching the way trash is collected in Ankara. So, and it got me thinking, well, how did they used to do trash and do cities and all of that 400 years ago? And so I did a little research, and really in Ankara, they still kind of do it like it used to be. So when we were living there, every night at 8 p.m., this old man with a cart and 3 young kids would come running through, and those kids would run out to all the buildings and fill his cart off and grab all the trash off the streets. And all of these people that did that would meet at this basically wide open lot about an acre in size, and they would have all the carts there, and there would be little campfires where they're making tea, and they would be trading stuff. And then the next morning, the garbage trucks would come and take everything that was garbage, and everything that could be recycled or that they could use or sell was already pulled off, traded, and sold off to other places. So that's how I came up with where Riam is basically a slave as a chirp. And the raker's yard is obviously the yard I saw there. And if you look up in history, that's what they were called, was rakers, were the people that collected trash. In early England were called the rakers because they raked the street. And chirp is actually the Turkish word for trash. And so, I kind of, when you're writing, you want to take everything and use it how you can and where it fits. And I wanted, that section of the story where Riam's, when you just thought he lost his trainer and things are going good, I wanted it to get extremely worse. Similar to, if you read Patrick Rothfuss, The Name of the Wind, when he goes to the city for the test, when he gets lost in the city for months prior and things go downhill till he can make an arc out of it, because we really need to see the bottom before we can really know the top. That turned out to be a good place to use all of that. And, I basically wrote the second half of the story, a fantasy story about garbage collection, but it works really well.
It did work. I really liked that. I liked when he was trying to figure it out and how he didn't absolutely freak out. He just kind of like, okay, I have a problem to solve. How do I fix it?
Yeah, and he is a young guy, and along the way you get to meet some good characters like Dorothy the innkeeper and the cooks. Everybody that I talked to was like, please bring the cooks back. Please bring the cooks back.
No, I like the cooks. I could visualize them. I could see them like if it was an anime or something.
Yeah, so they are definitely brought back.
Oh, good.
I think the only thing anybody's ever really given me any flack is some people really don't like when a certain character dies in the story. But there's a very purposeful reason for doing that. One is, you as a reader, when you're reading a story, we know that our protagonist is probably going to survive at least long enough to the end to solve the story. And so you have to look at, how can I heighten that risk? So if you lose a major character early on, it heightens the risk because you're like, ooh, I don't know what this author's capable of, or at least I know what he can be capable of. You don't ever have to do it again. Just that early one is enough to heighten the risk for the reader and to make it more enjoyable without them even knowing why. Now,
it gave him a drive. Like, I have to do this. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It gave him a drive. But there are a few people that will stop reading at that point and just be like, that's it. I'm done. But that's okay. The ones that stay on after that are usually very, into the story afterwards. And so, you don't have to go George R. Martin and kill everybody.
Yeah, and Susan says, pull a Game of Thrones, kill everyone.
Yeah, no, we don't need to do that. We just need something to know that the author is capable of heights you did not expect. And so it just
don't get attached.
Yeah, so it keeps the reader on their edge. Exactly.
Okay, Susan also asked, since you mentioned the sleeping gods earlier, will the next 2 books have more on the mythology and backgrounds and origins and motivations, a lot of ants, and motivations of all the gods?
So all you're really going to ever know about it are these 2, because they're the 2 that fell to this planet. Others fell to other planets. So really, you're going to get this. But the thing about this world is those two fighting before destroyed a whole continent and a whole culture where they had to flee to this one. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, even a god of good that is fighting against a god of darkness, you're just an ant. I mean, if you read this story, Nola, has to fight the lake to keep the good god from sucking in all her power because he wants to wake up and fight again. So that all purposeful, pure pulling to fight this isn't necessarily good for us small creatures down here. So either one waking up is not necessarily a good thing. But yes, there's absolutely, the history continues to build through it. And what's really nice is the next book starts off in Aurelia, where we left Riam on the ship going south. So we get to start out learning all about the southern continent culture as he works his way back around and north again, back into the lands of this first story.
So I have it next to me. I haven't actually looked at the book because I listened to the audio. Do you have a map in here?
Oh, absolutely.
Ah, there it is.
Absolutely.
I'm doing that poorly.
The map was drawn by a wonderful friend of mine named Jennifer Levita. And the only thing I requested was the compass rose that's a sea turtle, and she was fantastic putting that in. Because she's an artist out in California that does a lot of sea life. So I'm like, put one of your sea turtles in there. And she just did a fantastic job on the map. And then, I worked with it to get the names right and adjust how I wanted it. But she did a great job on the map.
Love maps. So useful.
Yes. And so the next book will have a map of the southern continent where that breaks off. And then the third book will have the two.
So we have, I think, a couple hardbacks that are autographed because Troy was in town in 2019.
Yeah, right after it came out. Yes.
Yeah. So if anybody's interested, we can sell that.
Outstanding.
And you should buy it. Okay, so we got more here.
Okay, great. We have some more questions.
When were you writing the future Nola? Wait.
The future's Nola
writing,
song.
Yeah. Did you consider any of those as a path you were going to follow? Oh, good question.
No, that is a great question. Honestly, no. I had the path set that I knew I wanted her to follow, but I wanted her to see bad possibilities and enticing possibilities. I wanted her to know what would happen if she escaped and went back north instead of staying with these people. I wanted her to know what would happen if she stayed and embraced it and married one of the people and became that. And I wanted her to know, what the future held if the tribes never unite and things don't work out, where you end up with a big major battle like you get at the end, where the Esharii are losing and they're the last holdout of the dark god because the god of light has not woken yet. So I always knew where I wanted to go, but I wanted to give her some definite. And then as we see, all magic has a price. So for all her time there, it changes things for her.
No, I love your world building. You did a very good job.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So, okay. You told me before the break that your book is being used as in a classroom?
Yeah. So down in El Paso, one of the colleges, one of my friends is an instructor there, and she uses it for her English sections as one of their reading books. And then I tend to do, before COVID, I would fly down and do like 2-day visiting lecture on a grant. Now I've been doing it by face like this. But it's a lot of fun because that I can focus on the writing and talk about writing a book and all of that. But then I can focus, on something else I'm passionate about. And that is writing and communication skills are so important, even if you're not a writer. And I try to tell, these young students in English classes that, English class seems like a class you're just trying to get to or get through, or something that's going to help you in your other classes. But really, the skills you learn there are going to pay more dividends in work in your profession than you could ever imagine. Because, for instance, I just, when I got out as a battalion commander and I have these young lieutenants, the difference between two great lieutenants that are going to go far is the one that can write and communicate. I mean, that makes all the difference in the world. You can be great and have awesome skills, but if you can't write reports, or, you can't communicate, or you can't send out emails to customers with things you want, you're handicapped for the rest of your life. And so, I really like to kind of give back and talk to those kids and say, hey, think about this now and focus on this class more than you think you should, because it's going to make a difference in your life, no matter what you do.
So when we opened the bookstore, I I was typing a ton, but it wasn't like in college when I was typing papers. It was just like I'd look up people. I almost sent my typing teacher a thank you note because
Right.
I'm like, oh, I'll never use this, or I'll use it, but it won't be that big a deal. But I remember when we first opened and I'm like typing away and I'm like, I need to thank her.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, that, and it really helps in a business to be able to send professionally, grammatically correct emails and
I can't
correspondence.
guarantee that my grammar is correct.
Reasonably clear and
my
correct.
spelling is, yes, clear. I'm good at clear, but the spelling, I'm dyslexic. It just doesn't work for my brain.
Right. But it's important. There are skills
It
you're
is
going to
very
use
important.
forever. And so, it's really fun to go down there or go online and talk to the students. And it's really nice of her to use my book to kind of broaden what they're reading through the genres.
No, I think that's great. You were saying that the men where you're working call you the professor?
Well, they used to. So
Yeah.
in one of my jobs, I would have to when I was the deputy commander of a brigade, I would have to basically review everything that went out, from evaluations to awards and everything else. And so, having a bachelor's degree in English and an MFA in writing, I didn't want them to be perfect, but they had to be reasonably good. And so they would be like, oh, the English professor's kicked it back again, So there were probably people that got a little frustrated with it, but they're better writers now, so they can thank me later.
Have you thought about teaching language arts?
I thought about it, but so my wife is an English teacher as well. She's always also has an English degree. In fact, we met in a poetry class in our undergraduate.
Oh,
and
that's really romantic.
Yeah,
that
sure.
is.
No, it was a very good poetry class actually, and teaching is so much work, and teachers deserve everyone's respect because it's such a hard job, whether you're at the college level or whether you're at the high school level, and you have to deal with bureaucracy and admin. And if you were just left alone to teach, it'd probably be a wonderful job. But there's so much else going on, and parents that don't appreciate it, and and then they don't realize that how many hours are just committed to grading and helping, and it's one of those jobs that will suck as many hours as you will give it. And if you want to be a great teacher, you have to commit yourself totally to it. And it would be exhausting. I don't think I could be a writer and be a teacher.
Sure. Well, I mean, you're teaching right now. You're teaching.
Correct.
Military
that
stuff.
is true. That is true. I'm teaching military stuff, and there is some writing involved and other stuff like that. But maybe that's why I'm so exhausted right now. No.
So, like how being in the military, how did that affect your writing?
Oh, I mean, you've read the book. Obviously, there are a lot of my military is put in there, and I think so. I could never write. Like, I have a friend of mine who just wrote the new book for the Tom Clancy series. One of my fellow classmates had two great books come out, or he has the second one coming out, and he got picked up to write 2 books for the Tom Clancy series, and it's doing great. He's also, he was an Apache helicopter pilot in the military. But I could absolutely never do what he does, and that's because it is very hard to write what the military actually does and write what the reader expects.
Yeah.
Because the reader wants Jason Bourne crossed with, A Few Good Men and all this other stuff, and I can't let go of the truth of what it's like to really do that justice and write what the reader wants as well. I can't let go. But I can do that in fantasy because it's my own world. And so with it, I can create my own regiments and a system that feels realistic and structured in the way they talk and treat each other. I can make that feel realistic in a military type way. And in fact, one of my favorite scenes is the wasp scene.
Yeah.
And when I wrote that, so back in 2005, I was a commander of a unit that's job was to keep bombs off the road, if you remember back then.
Yeah.
And I was trying to write a scene with magic that felt exactly what it was like when you could tell something was wrong right before a vehicle or a bomb went off on the road. And so I was trying to put that same kind of feeling, but in fantasy type thing. And so, yes, there's a lot of my military stuff poured in there, very, very much so. Yeah,
this is okay, I would recommend my husband to read this book. This is a very guy action nonstop. I'll probably have my teenager read it too because he loves that kind of thing.
But it's not just Guy. Nola's
not.
a badass.
Yes, she is.
And she's going to become a really bigger badass.
Badass in the next one.
Nola has the largest. So Nola has a very opposite arc of Riam. Riam is the guy floating on the wind that doesn't know where he's going, and towards the end of the book until he figured it out. Nola, on the other hand, is the one that's immature, protected, and shelter that has to go through a very, very quick arc to, I'm going to mess you up and I'm in control. And we kind of leave her in a spot where we kind of see that blossoming with her. But she has a very difficult things because there's still a lot of sexism within the tribes and prejudice against women wielding any power. So she has a lot to overcome, but she's going to be awesome when she does it.
Yeah, I'm not giving anything away. When I finished the book, I was like, wait, that's it? I want more. Like,
that's good.
No, it needs to just keep going. Why is it stopping?
No, to me, it does not feel like it's 155,000 words at all. It reads so much faster than a typical.
Yeah, it was a quick read.
Yeah, but I mean, that's 155,000 words is a pretty good sized fantasy story, but it reads really fast. I think everybody's told me it reads really fast. I think that's a good sign.
We got a question from Peyton. Hey, Peyton.
Sure.
What books did you read growing up?
Great. So my mother is an avid fantasy reader. She is 74 and she still always has a book in her hand. So from a very young age, I was pressed things like, everything. Everything fantasy from the 70s and 80s was pressed into my hand. And my neighbor.
So like Anne McCaffrey.
Oh, Anne McCaffrey.
Who else? Andre Norton.
Oh, of course, Andre Norton.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I have about 3,000 books at home in my library, and so I was, for a long time in my life.
Robert Jordan.
I like Robert Jordan to an extent.
Yeah,
Robert Jordan's.
It's a lot of book.
It's a lot of description. I always feel that if you took 30,000 words out of each one of those books, it would have been the best series ever written. I mean, but it's a fantastic read, so rich in details. But my gosh, I really don't need to know, that the buttons were bone and yellow on the 18th dress she wore on the 37th day, that kind of thing. But fantastic story, and I love the Robert Jordan stories. I remember, in fact, I started reading this is old. I was reading the Robert Jordan stories as they were coming out, the books as they were coming out during the Gulf War, when I was deployed over there. In fact, I remember reading book 2 during the Gulf War and book 1. Wow, I'm old.
Let's see here. We got some more questions. Was there anything you had to cut during revisions that you really wanted to keep? So
that's a great question. So when I finished the book, it was about 135,000 words. And before I tried to get an agent, I went through and cut everything I could down to 125,000 words. And my first agent, fantastic guy that used to work at, I'm not going to say where he worked, but he was a developmental editor for some really good people. Yeah. And so he wanted me to lengthen some things out, change some things, and do some other things. So I did a lot of revision, and it went from 125 back up to about 135. And then he left the business, and I had to start over and find a new agent.
I remember you telling me that. Yeah.
Right. And so then I went through it, and I found another agent. And, that's why you should never give up if you're a writer. Keep going through agents, because it just eventually one's going to fit and work. And in fact, my current agent turned me down the first time she read it. And after I lost my first agent, I sent her a note and said, hey, you read this, you asked for a full, you liked it, but it wasn't quite for you. But hey, I had an agent and I went through all these revisions. Would you like to take a look at it again? And so she took a look at it again. And then she wanted revisions. And that went up. And then the editor went through revisions. And then so slowly it grew up to about 155,000 words, when where I thought it was finished was about 125. So 30,000 more words is significant additions through revisions. None of my revisions get shorter unless I'm going through to actually cut it. So there was a huge revision process along with it. Nola's storyline kept getting expanded and expanded. Some things adjusted where Riam's kind of his slavery indentured servant time were kind of adjusted. How we got out of it, that kind of thing was adjusted a little bit. Okay. So lots of revisions. Revise, it'll never stop.
Let's see. There was something that confused me a bit about how do you say that?
The Draegorans going around testing kids for the blood power.
blood powers. When they find something that passes, shouldn't it be assumed that the rest of the family probably has enough too? Why not take everyone?
Well, so that's a good question. So if you read part of the book, you will notice that when Nola is selected, the family is paid, and that someone in the audience is like, I wouldn't want to be there when I get home. Basically, the Draegorans go out and sleep with people, and if you have a kid that has the blood, they pay them off and take the child.
Yeah.
So the parents don't really have the blood. It's a,
They plant their seeds, I think is what you said. They plant
their seeds to try to grow their regiments. Absolutely. So that's why they said, and you don't know the story of her mother. This could have been before she met the guy or anything else like that. But they basically want them to go out, find women their appropriate age, woo them, fall in love, plant their seed, and move on so that they can, make more children of the blood to bring into the regiments and grow the regiments.
Yeah, I remember that. Okay.
Yeah.
Isabella asks, what do you recommend people to read next who liked your book? I have one.
So I like, and he was very kind enough to blurb Lee Modesett. Lee Modesett, I think the Magic of Recluse series has a very somewhat similar style in the way we create characters and things like that, and the way the story is told. I think is very similar. Plus, he has some military background he draws on. So I think Lee Modesett is a very, I'm flattering myself, I guess, but yes, Lee would be someone I would read. Absolutely.
Here I'm finding it. Let's see here. I'll just do, you know what? I always assumed L.E. Modesett was a woman, but I guess I never looked that up, did I?
No, Lee's a fantastic guy.
Yeah, I've read a bunch of his stuff, and I never paid attention to, I guess, the bio.
And Lee's a great example for me. He came to writing late in life, and has put out 77 straight hardback novels.
Yeah,
and it's just
prolific.
He is very prolific.
Yeah,
and just continues to rock still and sharp as a tack, and I love his stuff.
Okay, the one I was thinking of. Have you read Ruin of Kings?
No, I have not yet.
Yeah, she's local to us, so it's here. I'll put it in the comments.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Who is it?
Jessica Lyons.
Oh, Jessica Lyons. So yes,
you met her. She was.
Yes, I have met her, and I have a copy of the book, and it's on my to be read pile. So
do it.
I guess I need to move that higher.
Yeah, you move it higher. Yeah. While I was reading it, I was like, oh, this is in the same vein of
So I really like some of the darker stuff. I really like Joe Abercrombie. I really like Mark Lawrence's Red Sister, and those are just, I think, fantastic. I really, obviously, like everyone else, I love, The Name of the Wind.
Yes.
But it's a long journey starting on that series of waiting, but that's okay.
Yeah.
No pressure on him at all. Okay,
do you have time to read now?
Not really. I don't have anything to read from.
Yeah.
So I didn't know we might do a reading, but I'm sorry. That's okay.
Oh no. I meant like.
Oh, do I have time to read? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I try to read before I go to bed. I'm currently going through the Expanse series. And I've been really impressed at the differences from the TV series and some of the other things that were changed. And so I'm really enjoying the Expanse. Before I wrote that, I was a Mark Lawrence's second series in the Red Sister series. I think it's The Girl in the Stars and The Girl in the Mountain. Fantastic reads. I
put a link down so you guys can check it out if you're interested.
Yeah, I think.
All right.
But yeah, I like some of the darker stuff, believe it or not. It's like Joe Abercrombie's as good as it gets, I think. And Mark Lawrence.
I have two of his books. No, I have one of his series, and I haven't gotten to it, but it's sitting on my bedside table for a long time.
Yeah.
I wonder which one it is. It's
Red Sister to me is the place to start, because that's where he's reached his full potential and is just an amazing writer I can only aspire to be like.
Oh, which one is it that I have? The Last Argument of Kings Before They Are Hanged.
Oh, that's Joe Abercrombie. Yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes, those are fantastic books. That's exactly where to start with.
The blade itself, before they were hanged in the last argument of kings. That's what I have like on my bedside table. It's been there for an embarrassingly long time.
And absolutely read Brent Weeks. I love Brent Weeks stuff.
Brent Weeks? Okay.
Oh yeah,
Adam
love Brent
Weeks.
Too. But you know, I love a lot. Like I said, I have read thousands of books, and that's what amazes me. If you want to be a writer, read. You have to know what your genre's done, and you know, I'm amazed at how many people I write that don't read. What's that?
Yes, I said I've read him too. Yeah.
He's fantastic.
I have to see covers, otherwise I'm just lost.
But yeah, and of course, you know, I've edited with a small press. That's what was really weird is I ended up editing Lee Modestet in an anthology, which is really weird when I have one book and he has 77 and I'm editing him. And what's really strange is, you know, it doesn't change as a writer. He's got 77 books, and when I give him feedback, it's just like talking to any other editor and like, oh yeah. And it's almost surrealistic, you know, that, hey, you got 77 books. You could tell me to shut up, but you know, he's so good with it. And
I remember I read him in high school and into college. Yeah.
And then, but that's with Zombies Need Brains. It was ZNB's press. Lots of small. None of the books are about zombies, but
and it's called Zombies
Need Brains.
Why call it about zombies if zombies aren't in it?
I don't know how the name of it came out. It was something Joshua Palmatier, who wrote The Skewered Throne, which is fantastic, came up with and started a small press. And, you know, he puts out 3 anthologies a year that are fantastic with, you know, about half anchor authors and half are through the slush pod and submission process. And it was really fun editing one. And I think myself and Gerald Brandt are going to try to edit one that comes out next year's cycle. Him and I will try to edit one together. More of a sci-fi one, though.
Well, I am looking forward to anything you write. Do you have any like going advice for aspiring authors?
Besides
I think you said it already.
Read in the genre and revise, and don't quit. Yeah.
Don't quit.
And butt in chair and all the other same advice you hear everywhere. I think my biggest is a long time ago, maybe 6 or 8 years ago, I was a slush reader for a small press. And I will tell you, when you get the book done and it's revised and perfect, do so much research on your query letters and stuff, because I will tell you, if you can write a decent, well-crafted query letter, you're beating 90% of the others submitting, you know, and at least puts you a little ahead of the game, because I would get stuff that I'm like, oh my Lord. I mean, I would get a query letter that's 8 pages long, you know, and it's like, you know, no one has time for that. So do your research on a 1-page strong query letter and how to do that professionally. And you'll have much better results with them at least reading into the first chapter or asking for the first chapter. I think your results will be much better. You know, you have to learn not just the art of writing, but the craft of publishing. And you have to do some research on that side. And you have to get out of your shell and go to some conferences and network with agents and editors and other things like that, because if they've seen you and know you, it just might encourage them to read that one extra page that makes the difference.
That's great advice. I mean, that you could apply that to anything. I mean, write well, be in front of people, and don't stop.
Yes. Network. And be professional.
Yep.
And be professional. No.
All right, Troy. This was awesome. I always enjoy talking to you. You're such a nice guy.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right.
I love the bookstore. I follow it online.
Thank you.
I'm sorry about the flooding. Hopefully everything's settled after a while, and I can't wait till I can get out that way.
You got plans coming this way?
I would like to. I told you I have a rental home out in Georgia that I really need to go out. So if I go out, I'm definitely coming that way and leaving you with a stack of signed books and other stuff.
I'll take it. Yeah. We have one more question. How much info is still professional in a query letter if there's a risk of sounding overly familiar?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So there's an industrial standard out there. If you just do a little Googling and sharpening your query letter, you can find it. I mean, so the big difference between a query letter and writing is show, don't tell. A query letter is tell, don't show, you know, and so it's a professional greeting. It's a little tiny bit to get them interested in the book. It is tell them what the book's about. Don't hide the ending. You know, it's what does a protagonist have? What's against it? How do they overcome it? What solves it? Maybe a comparison, a comp of what it's similar to, but why it's better and different. And maybe 2 sentences about you. Don't make it about you. And really, that professional succinct. But I'll tell you, writing a query is harder than writing and revising any chapter you will ever do in your
I've heard a
life.
lot of authors say that. That's crazy.
And it doesn't get any easier afterwards because you have to write the backstory on your books, the stuff that goes on the inside cover, the marketing blurbs. So have all of that. Think about that when you finish your book. There's a lot of little professional things you've got to do. You need to do a 1-page synopsis, a 20-page synopsis, a 3-page synopsis, a 1-paragraph synopsis. You'll write synopsis till you hate writing them. You know. So, but yes. Anyway, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Susan wanted to know if you signed the wall yet. He hasn't. He needs to. We have an author wall that actually still survived the flood, and
awesome.
We need you to sign it.
Absolutely. When I come out that way, I will absolutely sign it. All right.
Yeah, when you come to visit, we'll do a big event. We'll do a signing. We'll have both your books. I don't
Outstanding.
We'll have food. There'll be less COVID.
We can do my book 2 launch from you guys.
Yes, book 2 launch. Great. I like it.
So there you go. Well, everyone have a wonderful evening. I appreciate anyone that clicks on and watches. And whether you read me or anyone else, keep reading.
We have copies of Lives of Descent in stock. We have a couple that are autographed. And if you think of it, Troy, could you send us some autographed book plates?
I will absolutely do that.
Okay. I know you have a lot going on, so it's okay.
No, it's too easy.
It's too, okay, good. Anyway, so we have them in stock. You don't have to buy them from us, but we prefer you do. Just please support your local independent bookstore, whoever that may be. Preferably read it again, but if not, it's okay. We understand. So, all right. Have a good night. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, no, thank you so much. You all are wonderful.
Okay, guys, go out and read. Bye.
That's right. Go read.
Go read.